Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Laura Hamilton. I have Book Larder, which, as you know, is a cookbook store in Fremont and is a place where we would normally be hosting a conversation like this. So I appreciate your flexibility as we adapt to the current scenario and try to take these talks online. I'm delighted to kick off this series with Sami Tamimi and Tara Wigley. They, as you know, are the authors of Palastine, the cookbook that you either have now or it's waiting for you to pick up at the shop or is in the mail on the way to you. They are going to be in conversation with Warren Etheredge, who is a longtime friend of Book Larder and is a film and media producer and someone who we're very lucky to have us do these interviews with us on a regular basis. We are going to use the Q&A feature for your questions. So you are more than welcome to use the chat feature in order to sort of talk to each other. But we are not going to, it's kind of hard to keep track of that. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to see a little dialog box that says Q&A, and you can put your questions in there. We will do this for about an hour. And like I said, be sure to ask questions if you have them. And enough about me. I'm going to turn things over to Sami Tamimi, Tara Wigley, and Warren Etheredge.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you. Where's Sami?
We almost have Sami. He's very shy. He's in witness protection right now. There he is.
Hey.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being here. And for those who don't have it in their hands, here's the book right there. You should have a copy. You ought to have a copy. It's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic read. And they're lovely recipes, although I haven't had it long enough to prepare any myself. But I do have plenty of questions for both of you. And Sam, if I may start with you, I'm sort of curious. You have spent, at this point, 2/3 of your life outside of Palestine. And this book takes you back home. So it's a homecoming of sorts. But I wonder how you define your home of Palestine now, how that feels to you, what it means to you.
I mean, I'm lucky enough to have an extended family that they still live in there. I go home. I always say I go home. It kind of feels, everything feels familiar, and you know, I don't feel kind of alienated or kind of stranger. Obviously, I missed already like probably 3 generations already, but I'm still very connected to the place, to the food, to the culture, to the language as well, and obviously to the family as well. So when I go back, I don't feel kind of oh, I am kind of a tourist coming in. I feel like I'm at home. But saying that, my life now is in London. So when I do go back to Palestine or to Jerusalem, I after like say how long is your kind of staying, 1 week or 2 weeks, I want to go back home.
That's all it takes. Tara, you were not born in Jerusalem, I don't believe. So for you, less of a homecoming, but I'd like to talk about it seems like you've been changed by this process over the years.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I started with Ottolenghi, the company, sort of just coming up for 10 years, 10 years ago. And it wasn't until then that I had my sort of culinary epiphany. And I wasn't someone who kind of grew up sort of imbibing the recipes of my mother. But it wasn't until I went to Ottolenghi that, in fact, when I first tasted preserved lemon, my initial thought was that it tasted like soap. And Sami thought, who is this girl? Get her out the kitchen. But seconds after, I sort of fell in love with the stuff and sort of haven't looked back. And now I'm kind of knee deep in this world of ingredients and stories and recipes.
Well, I'm curious because at some point in the book, you list the 10 items you'd want on your desert island with you, and they're all from the book. We got sumac, we got tahini and stuff like that. What was that list like 15 years ago?
15 years ago, it was probably all the same things, but probably not the tahini, probably not quite the correct olive oil. In fact, today in a shop, I was going to buy some kimchi and I thought, who am I kidding? Like, I just, you know, kimchi just doesn't work with tahini. I'm such a kind of Middle Eastern ottolenghi clone. And now the fruit bowl is just full of lemons and my kids wake up to the smell of burnt aubergine. And yeah, that I eat so much shatta that we've renamed it shatara. So I don't know, yeah, I'm stuck in, but I think a lot of people are for Middle Eastern food. You know, it's just got such big appeal because it's just good, proper food with ingredients whose names you can pronounce, and it's just beautiful, vegetable focused, sort of tahini rich, often vegetarian, homely, beautiful, easy sharing food. So I think I'm not the only one with this bug.
No, I think this is certainly a moment. And you use that phrase Middle Eastern cuisine, which really is as broad as saying American. It doesn't mean a lot. This is very focused, certainly. I'm curious for you, Sami, like Middle Eastern food, if we're going to call it that, is having a moment, but there are many different forms of it. There are many different styles. You have your own particular take. Would you think you're more in the Ala Musa category or the Daher Zaidani category? Are you trying to push the envelope or are you trying to give people what they want?
That's a very niche question. That really depends on people knowing, having read their book.
I expect everybody to do their homework, please. But you can explain a little bit, Sam.
Restaurant profiles, everybody.
I'm kind of torn in between because I find both of them very talented, very interesting people, but there isn't like, both of them black and white, there's no gray, which is for me kind of alarming because I remember having chat with both of them and me coming from the same place, and when somebody asked me how do I consider myself, I will always say I'm a Palestinian living in London. For these two, they were kind of, one of them just said, I don't like anything. Like he didn't like tourists, he didn't like anybody that kind of don't speak the language to come to his place. And the other one, he's so not interested in the whole defining thing where he's a Palestinian and he will kind of whisper it in your ear, but he doesn't want to kind of confront in front of other people that, you know, for him to say, I am Palestinian, it's kind of a political stand. And he's a hip, he will have 2 restaurants in a very touristy place, one in Akka and one in Haifa. He's a very talented chef, but you know, he's kind of, for me, it's not even, he's clever, but also he kind of lost his way in, you know, the whole identity.
But and also Sami's a bit more friendly than Daher, who had very strong opinions about what his guests were and weren't allowed to do in his restaurant. But I think for us, that's why we love having all these profiles in the book, because the fact that you've got 2 guys who own restaurants very close to each other, and they've got such different relationships with food and politics and the relationship between these 2 things. And yet they're both Palestinian and they're both doing interesting, delicious things with food. And you read these 2 profiles and realize that there are just as many stories as there are restaurants and people, and that's kind of why we've got these profiles, because it'd be interesting to have these 2 guys talk to each other. You know, we're telling both their stories, but we don't know whether they've met and sort of shared their different opinions.
Well, I give Daher a vote because he likes his customers to have a drink, so I applaud that. But he sounds very Parisian to me. How do you, in Palestine, how do you explain Palestinian food, Sami? If you had to explain it, how would you identify?
Palestinian food, I mean, because the region once used to be one, you know, which is they used to call it Al-Sham, which is Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan all joined together. There's quite a big influence in that, but also because of the trade and, you know, it's on a coastal, so quite a lot of kind of new things came to the area, like, you know, different spices and different cooking techniques. So I mean, I'll give you a little example. Like for my mom's cauliflower fritters with cumin, and they are very kind of Indian pakoras in a way. They have the same kind of ingredients, and people have been cooking them for hundreds of years, and you know that it's a very Palestinian kind of dish to make, but when you look at it deeply, it's not really. It came from somewhere else, you know, through Persia or India with the spice kind of fruit. But also Palestinian cooking is all about foraging, for example. They live on the season, they forage for the season, they create meals from shrubs and greens and leaves and roots that they forage every year. Seasonal is a very kind of important thing. I mean, they celebrate the season. If something comes in season, you see it everywhere in Palestine, and they make the best out of it. You know, they really kind of do few dishes from, like say, fava beans. They do few dishes from that, but also they will try to preserve it for, you know, later on when they don't have it in a season, like, you know, pickling, drying. Nowadays, everybody have a huge freezer at home, and, you know, they kind of half prepare things and freeze them, which is they call mune or hawader, where they, for them, it's easy to kind of construct a feast. I mean, every time you go to somebody's house and you are kind of invited for a meal, it's never a meat and two veg. It's, you know, they give you the best. They want to make you quite welcome. Things like, for example, sorry, in Gaza, they eat quite a lot of spicy food, lots of chilies, lots of dill seeds, fresh dill. Obviously, they have, because they're on a coastal, they also have access to, you know, seafood and fish. So each area have its own kind of typical dishes and typical ingredients that they use.
Well, that was a very thorough answer, and I appreciate that answer.
I hope I answered all your questions.
I believe the cauliflower and corn fritter recipe from your mom was also in the first Ottolenghi book, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
It is. It's correct.
But almost all the others are new. But I like this idea of family members contributing. You have your father's eggs. You have this recipe for the fritters from your mom. Even your sister Sawan gave you a dough recipe in there.
Yeah.
But I believe you have 6 full siblings and 5 half siblings. Did the rest of them not kick in a recipe or two?
Yeah. I remember when Tara and me were kind of sitting down in one of the hotels in Jerusalem, and she was trying to understand their names, and she had a huge page, and then she had another huge page, and before you know it, we had 5 pages full of names, and she's like, just forget it, I'm not gonna give you this.
We might have to have a family tree, like it's sort of the beginning of a Tolstoy book, where you actually just list all the characters.
Now, Tara, your family actually got in on the action to a certain extent, because I understand that your brother, for the first time in your professional career, actually prepared a recipe from the book. Did that feel flattering, or did you think, why did it take this long?
I mean, he is a man on a mission. He's had a Damascene conversion, aged 47, and he used to live in Tooting in South London, so just lived on takeaway curries. And now he's moved up. We also live together, and he's just on fire. I mean, he's just going for it, sort of dish after dish after dish, and it's unheard of. So yeah, I feel like my work here is done. I can now.
That's it. So,
yeah. And last night he just did the dish that we were inspired to make, having eaten with Daher, where he made this beautiful okra, tomato, halloumi cheese dish, and Justin's all over that right now.
it looks fantastic, and that's one I had signaled for myself as one I want to try as soon as I'm back home. You both have been in the Ottolenghi Empire for quite a while now. Sami, you helped found the Ottolenghi Empire. Yotam has been good enough to turn his name into a verb. If Tamimi were to become a verb, what would that mean? Tamimify, what would that mean?
um,
I reckon it would be like Tamimi times, like good times. Sammy wants good times. Tamimi, hey, let's come over for some Tamimi times.
Well, she's answered for you. That's very nice. Nicely done. Good teamwork on that. Sami, would you say that you have, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, Sumud? And can you explain what that is, I guess?
I'm a resilient person. I mean, I kind of withdraw my kind of inner powers from different places. I'm not a political person, but you know, you see wrong things and it hurts, and you want to kind of help. And obviously, talking to my family on a daily basis and hearing stories, and so. I mean, the big question is, the big answer is yes, of course, I am.
I really agree. As someone who's not really handling the inner Sumud.
I live it on a daily basis.
Tara, you're there.
Sorry, I'm interrupting because Sami was going out. But as someone who doesn't really channel that inner steadfastness or Sumud, like I sort of run at a very different pace to Sami, and it's absolutely humbling to see someone just kind of be very level and steadfast and consistent with everything that happens. And it's really humbling to see as someone who's kind of up and down. And I remember when we were trying to sort of organize things for our trips, for example, I would be kind of firing off emails kind of weeks in advance and trying to kind of book it all in and trying to kind of make my hecticness everyone else's hecticness. And Sami's just sort of sitting there kind of totally present, totally sort of in the moment, just saying this is just not the way that it works. You have to go, you have to be there. It's about time, it's about patience, it's about steadfastness. And yeah, that was very much shown to me when I went to Palestine with Sami.
That steadfastness you talked about seems to be very true of the people of the region and all the people that you profile. One of the interesting folks is Vivian Sansour, who started the seed library out there. And that is absolutely fascinating, and it sort of mirrors what the American Southern chef Sean Brock has been doing in trying to bring back these things that have been lost and finding the seeds and starting those again. But I'm curious, some of the things mentioned there, like, is it Jalud melons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sami, have you actually tried those? Do you have a memory of those?
Yes, of course, I do. I mean, I'm old enough to remember a lot of things that we had, but they don't exist anymore. I mean, come on, I'm 52, so I'm the 70s kid. So yeah, I remember, and I totally kind of, I think she's quite brave, and what she's doing, it's a very, very important role in, you know, preserving and bringing back. I mean, with Palestinians, food and farming and ingredients and of course land, it's a very kind of crucial thing to preserve it. I mean, slowly we kind of losing, you know, everything because of the struggle there. And her role is to inspire young farmers to actually take the risk and take these seeds and, you know, plant them. And, you know, it's a different farming, because a lot of our vegetables and fruit are not irrigated. So, you know, they just have to be left alone. But, you know, you have to, it's a whole chemistry behind it. Also, you have to be quite cautious about it, and, you know, it can go wrong, but the end result of, you know, the product that you get, it's absolutely delicious. And we slowly, because of this process of, it's a little bit harder than just kind of putting it in a greenhouse and irrigation and computer, they lose in all these delicious and kind of unusual ingredients.
So what does one taste like?
It's absolutely delicious. It's not like any, it's very, it's very, very strong in the smell. And, you know, once you open it, it's so delicious. And the seeds are quite big, so you can actually pick the seeds, and they normally dry them on somewhere sunny, and then they will toast them and eat them, you know, like snacks. But the flesh is yellow, it's delicious, and they're quite huge as well.
And so I'm curious, if Vivian's doing this work, as a food writer and a chef paired up, what do you think your responsibility is in preserving that culture and expanding that culture? Do you have any?
I do. I mean, as a Palestinian, I always wanted to write this book, and also that it always followed me all over throughout my career as well. This is the food that I go back to when I feel homesick or just kind of feel like something comforting. I will cook Palestinian food. It is for it's a thank you as well for me, because I got so much from the culture, the people, the food, my family, the place as well. Wanted to kind of, it's almost like a big thank you for that, and also show the world where I came from first of all, and we all know that you mentioned the word Palestine or Palestinian kind of gets you, but they are lovely people. They're very welcoming. Hospital, they want to feed you as well. So this is what I wanted to kind of portray.
Tara, did you want to add to that, or you're standing
so.
proud?
What do I want to add to that? Yeah, I think as well as looking back and a sort of massive moment for Sami to reflect, we were also really keen for the book to be very much about sort of Palestine today, as Sami says, and kind of showing, not just kind of steadfastness and kind of, seed as metaphor for kind of hope, but actual kind of real enterprise and people doing really interesting, dynamic, delicious things with food. And there's everyone you meet and every place you go, there's such a paradox, because you can be in a kind of apparently hopeless context and yet witnessing such kind of hope and positivity and enterprise. For example, Islam, who we hung out with in the refugee camp, you sort of you go in there and she's just not kind of sitting about sort of feeling hopeless. She's creating this really thriving business, teaching tourists and passers-by how to cook and giving cookery lessons, and she's making money. She's got her cooperative and her community, and she's just one of many women and men, but more women, who are just rocking it and just kind of making things happen. So yeah, it's we hope that people will read the book and get a real sense of the dynamism and the positivity, and that they'll leave the book, and when they think of Gaza, they'll think of what they think of Gaza, but they'll also think of the stories and the ingredients that we've kind of shone a light on, hopefully.
Well, one of the things I think that you accomplish so well is that not only does any good cookbook can make you hungry or make you want to prepare food, this book actually makes me want to visit, right? Because there's so many elements that feel like I'm not going to really get a taste of or to experience unless I'm there. There's so many hurdles to things being exported that it seems like you have to be there. So
I think the cookbook can be a really sort of unintimidating way in, because I think we've all got these big sort of non-fiction books on our shelf that we slightly don't read, or questions that we're afraid to ask because we're so ignorant about what is what and who is where and what's allowed and how did this all happen. This book, through telling stories and encouraging people to tell stories and listen to stories and come to the table and break bread and sort of hopefully I think it can be a really sort of nice, unintimidating way into this sort of intimidating setup if you're an outsider.
But even beyond the politics, if I want some taboon bread, I'm going to have to go over there, aren't I?
We tried to create a taboon oven in the test kitchen in Camden, and Sami went off to the garden centre and came back with these sort of 2 massive bags of rocks and pretty much destroyed the ovens in the test kitchen before we told him that we'd just get bread.
So I'll go there for that. Sami, I'm curious.
Also, saying that you want to visit. I mean, when we were in Bethlehem, it made me really sad because all these tourists are coming these big coaches and they rushed in. They go to the Nativity Square. They visit the church. They take them to this bazaar which sells rubbish. and then they leave. So they don't really see anything from Bethlehem apart from what the plan says, and just leave the coach and just walk around and talk to the people and eat the local food as well. That's another thing. They stop them to eat burgers and chips and stuff like that, and it's terrible.
Maybe if you want the best falafel in town, it's served in Nativity Square. You can't miss it. Just follow the smell.
So you mentioned falafel, and I'm curious because Sami, the way you describe it, it sounds like people like it's not make it at home. You like eat it on the street, and it reminds me of a New York City hot dog. I never want to make a hot dog at home, and I will question anything that I see in a New York City hot dog cart, but I'll eat it there. You have to go to the street.
Exactly. And falafel is never done at home in Palestine. Hummus hati is done at home because you have all these people that do it all their life, and you have one person that does only hummus and he does it the best. Why would you do it at home? Or same thing.
We do have two very good recipes to make it at home.
No, but we don't live in Palestine. That's the thing. And we want people to experience, the whole kind of culture and food, and yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's a revelation for people when they first have falafel hot out of the fryer at home or on the street. This is something that should be eaten fresh out of the pan. So the idea of it sitting in a refrigerated sort of part of a kind of presse à manger overnight, like it's just not falafel. Same with hummus, it should be creamy and warm and the idea of it being kind of fridge cold again. So I think it's a revelation for people who have it for the first time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are many revelations for you, Tara, and just tahini being one of them, in terms of what we perceive to be tahini, probably in the States at least, probably has little bearing on what tahini actually should be. Is that fair to say?
You say the Ottolenghi Empire, but in fact it's just a cult all about sort of propagating the idea that everyone needs to get the tahini.
Don't tell him it's a cult, he'll take that to heart.
So for us, it's just, we've got a real bias towards the Arabic tahini, which is just nutty and creamy and smooth and should pour from the jar. So if you turn anything upside down and if it's not pouring out, then it's just too claggy and it's going to be a bit bitter. And there's a beautiful picture in the book where you've got a kind of spigot where it's literally kind of opened up and the tahini comes out with this beautiful guy who is making his artisan product. But it should be good enough just to put on your porridge, to put on your toast, to put on your ice cream, dip your chocolate in. And again, revelation it is for people who don't realize what they're missing till they have it.
Excellent. It looks like we have a question from one of the cult members. So let's see. This is Hi, Sami. This is Blair from I Cook Ottolenghi, or at I Cook Ottolenghi Instagram account. You've been my hero and greatest support in cooking every recipe in the Jerusalem cookbook. I love being able to ask questions during my culinary journey. You are such an inspiration. I'm so excited for Palastine, and especially the breads and pastries chapter. My question is, what brand of yeast is used in Palestine versus the kind we buy in the US? Is there a difference? Does the brand have an impact?
Yeah, in Palestine, we don't have the fresh yeast, which is, they keep in the fridge, and normally dried. They have it in two forms, which is powdered and grains. We have that in the UK, but I'm not sure about the US, whether you have that or not. Sometimes they call it fast-acting yeast, sometimes they call it different names. But definitely not the kind of chemical ones.
Okay. Excellent. I was curious about, speaking of bready products, Jerusalem bread. I've never had that. These long oval.
Yeah.
Is there any correlation between that and sort of like an Ashkenazi bagel, or are they more like pretzels, or where do they fall in that line?
They are totally different. They are more like a fluffy inside and very crusty outside. It's not that chewy. They're very typical to the old city of Jerusalem. This is where this whole kind of literally every morning you see them everywhere. You know, these guys come with a crate and just all have them on their heads and just kind of deliver them to different places. And you stop on your way to work, or, you know, coming back later on from, you know, I don't know, doctor appointment, and you grab these breads, and they always give you a sack of salt and za'atar, and you can buy also oven baked eggs to that. And you, of course, later on you stop at the hummus place and the falafel place, and you can actually, you know, munch on them on the way to home or work, but also take them home and just make a kind of a proper Palestinian breakfast with a bit of salad and olives and za'atar and olive and kind of a bowl of olive oil, I wanted to say. So yeah,
tahini mixed with date molasses.
Yeah, this is delicious. Yeah, just kind of.
I'm not a natural baker, and the ones in Palestine are super simple. I mean, I love making them, and they're great making with kids because you can be really kind of sort of the dough is very sort of robust, and you sort of pull it very long, and there's no kind of steaming involved. So as a non-baker pro, I love the recipe for bagels in Palestine.
They're quite similar to the Turkish samit. But they're a lot fluffier and softer than the simit.
So Tara, you mentioned a key word in there, and that was simple. And you worked with Ottolenghi on his simple book, which I'm still trying to figure out the letter code for. This book is far simpler. Was that you paying penance, or is just the food that much more approachable?
Well, so you think the food of Palestine is simpler?
Yes.
It's funny. I hadn't actually thought that until I was seeing that feedback coming through. But I think the cooking of Palestine is so naturally homely and rustic, and sort of big dishes or you know, big sort of sharing dishes. And the genius of the Ottolenghi Simple book is that we managed to massively complicate the idea of simple, and there are lots of really unsimple recipes in there, but we got it in under the radar. Everyone fell for it. And it's brilliant. So yeah, and actually I've had a lot of people saying there's a lot less chopping in Palestine. So, just you know, things like the aubergine tray bake, people are just going mad for the moussaka, just aubergines, chickpeas, tomatoes kind of in, and you know, particularly in lockdown where people are just sort of getting all these meals on the table day after day after day. There's a lot of Palestine cooking going on.
Well, if you do a sequel to this one, you could just call it Simpler, and then take Yotam on right there. We have some other questions here from Karen. I made both the tahini buns and the sesame breads, and the recipes worked perfectly. Love the book. Oh, not a question, but there's quite the compliment. Well done, proving the point. From John Christensen, enjoying your talk. What is your go-to source for spices online?
To go to what, the place?
For a place online that you can go to buy the spices.
The Ottolenghi web store?
I mean,
and that URL is?
Well, also, I mean, Zaytoun, sorry, Sam, Zaytoun is a beautiful producer, although actually I think they don't ship to the US.
We also have a company called Sous Chef as well.
Yeah, they're great.
They have a really good selection. We are also lucky to have Zaytoun. Zaytoun is ladies kind of owned little company where they import products from Palestine, and all the products are really, really good. So I would recommend it. If you can get it online, that would be great. But you know, my advice also to just head to your Middle Eastern kind of shop if you have one, and just ask. Don't be shy. Just go in and just say, I'm looking for that. And they will give you, you know, a few options probably, but try to get either Lebanese or Palestinian or Syrian.
And also spices freeze really well. So if you go somewhere and you can get a big kind of 500 grams or a kilogram of za'atar, get it, even though you'll look like a drug dealer, but you know, it can all sit in the freezer and you can just bring it out as you need it. And Sous Chef, they stock Zaytoun, so that we're talking about Zaytoun is one thing and Sous Chef is another, but I got this during lockdown from Sous Chef, and they're supplying zaytun za'atar, which is beautiful. So if you can find any of those, then you're onto a winner.
Yeah, can I just say something about za'atar? Please don't buy za'atar that have any wheat in it. You know, za'atar is the za'atar plant, which is a little bit like the family of the oregano. Sumac, sesame seeds, and a bit of salt. That's it. No more adding to it.
Other than that, very relaxed.
Yeah. I'm opening a fire on somebody here.
I want to go back in time a little bit. I'm like, not only, I mean, I love the sound like you're eating constantly, walking in the streets, there's bread, falafel, everything's going. But even when you were young, you were being sent to the butcher shop to get things ground up in the mixer there. How old were you at the time?
Probably like 8. Yeah, because, you know, we were a big family, and, you know, my mom probably was knackered, so we each has chores and what to each one kind of have its own thing. So my kind of role is to go to the shops and get hummus, falafel, go to the butcher. My mom will give me this little bag with
Did I lose you there?
Cubes of meat and the sachet of spices. Just say my father's name and it's ready to basically shake in bits of it and just eat it on the way back home.
Okay, I think I missed a little bit of that, but I'm trusting other people got it. Tara, did you get it all?
I think I was reading between the lines, but I was also remembering just sort of witnessing Sami having some of these Madeleine moments when we went back, and you know, people talk about Madeleine moments, but to actually, there were sort of 2 or 3 occasions where it really was like time stopped and this kind of light shone as Sami as he was, you know, sort of walking down the street back from the butcher, as it were, or eating a sort of shish barak dumpling or some kind of ice cream in Haifa that I thought was disgusting, that tasted like bubblegum, that he just thought was like childhood heaven. And it's actually amazing. I don't think I've ever actually seen someone in that moment kind of go off in this reverie of just this sort of goofy grin. And yeah, it was a beautiful thing to see. And again, my relationship with food is so different. It's just not so rooted in identity and place as it is in Palestine, because the food is you know, it hasn't changed a lot. So people are going back and literally having the same thing that they had 40 years ago. And again, people talk about food and identity and place, and it's just a different thing from my experience of observing Palestine with people there.
Do I detect some envy there, Tara?
Yeah, I mean, I think about my Madeleine moments, and it's kind of, you know, chicken schnitzel, kind of sort of fried, or angel delight from my granny in Guildford. You know, it's not quite as romantic and beautiful as the shish barak hand rolled dumplings made by my grandmother. But anyway, we all come to things at different stages.
It's all in the stories. It's all in the stories. We have another question out here for you from Yvonne. Thanks for the talk today. Another ingredient question. I've never been able to find frozen shelled fava beans, only fresh for a short period of time, or canned. What's the drawback to using canned in your recipes that call for frozen fava beans?
We didn't actually think about these canned ones. They are absolutely fine to use. I mean, you know, you just have to wash them properly and start the recipe with just kind of washed and dried fava beans. Can I just ask, is that to do with the full medames, or there's quite a lot of fava beans. There's a green frozen, and there's also the canned one.
For me, when I'm making the full at home, I for sure use the jarred ones, the ones in a can, and then just give them a rinse, and absolutely grand.
So, yeah.
There's nothing like the time it takes to work with fresh fava beans. Come on. It's a process.
We are all about the practicalities, so mindful of the home cook, and there's a reason there's not too many recipes for kind of vegetables that you have to spend half a day coring and stuffing, and things like the vine leaf. instead of asking people to kind of individually hand roll vine leaves, we just got this really practical vine leaf sort of tray baked pie where you just line the tray with the leaves and then pile in all the ingredients and fold it up and bake it, and it takes a tenth of the time, and yet the essence is completely there. So we're all about the kind of the practicalities of the Monday night home cook.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Sami, I don't know that if you can answer this this way. Maybe we need a demonstration. I don't know if it's possible. But one of your first gigs when you were 17 was cracking eggs, and you cracked 300 eggs a day, and you learned to perfect that process. I guess I've just been doing it wrong all this time. What is the perfect way to crack one egg, let alone 300?
Have you not seen the recipe?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, you haven't seen the recipe, Warren. It's in the book. Scrambled eggs for 300.
I know, but I want to hear it from Sami how that actually happens.
At the end of it, I used to be able to crack 6 eggs in one go. Like I would hold 3 and 3 and crack them, and you will never have a shell kind of in the mix. So every morning I would just kind of find a different way to make it a little bit less boring. Cracking all these eggs. I mean, at one point I had these, it's like a ladle that looks like a spider web, and you just crack the egg in it and do this. And the egg kind of goes down. But yeah, it's an art form. It's something that, you shouldn't underestimate.
I think we need to work on a recipe for shakshuka for 200.
That's one big breakfast. I'm curious, Sami, because like you're an artist with eggs, clearly, and you've got some great conversation starters at a party with cracking 6 eggs. You're an author. You're part of the Ottolenghi Empire. The co-founder of the Ottolenghi Empire. You've done so much. I understand that at some point it seems like there may have been a little distance between you and some family members or something like that. Does this success, does this book bring you back together? Do you feel like this is a healing process as well in any way?
It is, and I see it also as, it took me so many years to do this book, although it was on my radar so many years. But also, I left when I was quite young, and I was ambitious, and I wanted to do things, and I was angry at everything, and the older you get, I did really well in my life, and you just go. It's like a circle that everybody probably will experience, where you get to 52 like I do, and you just kind of want to close this circle that you open, and you never bother to kind of do it. It brings me very close to the family and to a lot of these wonderful people that we met as well in the last 3 years, and more people that I've been contacted by childhood friends that I've never kind of talked to them now for 20 or 30 years, and we actually talk, which is really, really kind of wonderful thing. So yeah, it is kind of brings me back, not back, but it kind of brought me, it's very, very, very close to the whole kind of being a little child in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I love that. And another relationship I'm sort of curious about, Tara, and maybe you can address this, is like cookbooks are not easy. They take a long time. It's quite a partnership. And I'm curious about how that relationship has grown between the two of you in this process. I mean, is it at least 5 years that you've been working on it? Is that fair to say?
I mean, we always say 2, but I imagine it's sort of 3 probably, not 5.
Not 5.
But like all relationships, Warren, there have been ups and downs.
we even did what is it like?
Therapy.
Together.
But no, I mean, I'd say if you did a kind of personality profile of Sami and I, we come out very differently in lots of ways. But I really believe it's for the benefit of the book that there's this sort of energy between us, and this, well, first of all, we're going in a different direction because it's Sami's journey back home and it's my adventure into a new cuisine. So from the outset, we were coming at things from different angles. You know, I'm a mum, I'm a home cook, I'm all about the practicalities. Sami's a professional chef with different ages, you know, just all these different things. But actually, sort of Sami and I, and also within the test kitchen, so it wasn't just us, we had Noor, who we were cooking with, Yotam was trying everything. There's always other development chefs coming in. So it's like creating theatre, got all these different kind of parts and elements, and no one quite knows what the magic's going to look like until sort of opening night. But yeah, I mean, there've been really massive ups, a few crashing downs, and we're all still virtually hugging.
Yeah, I mean, also it was also interesting when we traveled to Palestine together, when we did 3 times and Tara did a couple of times before, and how you can actually learn from each other different in a very kind of indirect way, and you get the best out of, you know, each other. It is a relationship, and you know, you go to a place that for me it was all familiar, and I you know, a kind of expected thing to be a little bit different, but actually I went back to a familiar place. Where for Tara, it was kind of an eye-opening, and she had to kind of readjust to so many things, but also to be able to be productive as well at the same time. And
Sami had a couple of lines that he wouldn't cross, and one was called the quinoa line, because there was quite a few times where I tend not to eat gluten at home, and there was quite a few times where I was suggesting that quinoa could work instead of bulgur or maftool in a recipe. And Sami must have told me kind of 100 times that this will never, ever be any quinoa in this goddamn book, because quinoa is not a Palestinian ingredient. So there were some lines that I couldn't cross.
The tensions of Mideast peace talks right there.
Every recipe is every recipe, you know, is being interviewed kind of by the board panel. You know, it's every recipe, and I think it's the secret behind the success of all Ottolenghi books is the fact that the recipes work, and in order to do so, they go through this really, really rigorous test. So it's Sami and I, but it's also 5 other people who are all testing and tasting, and nothing gets through without kind of 100% thumbs up. So yeah.
So when I first asked that question, I was wondering if maybe, depending on the answer, if Jeremy ever got jealous, but I think that's safe. Your relationship is safe.
My husband was always very happy that Yotam was married to a man when I first started.
So good. If Chris and Jeremy are happy, then we're. It
was quite funny traveling around with me and Sami and Jeremy did one trip together, and it was quite funny getting to lots of hotel reception, sort of concierge, and then not quite knowing who was going where and who was doing
It's such an open relationship. It's great. I have one quick question from one of our attendees, and then I have another question for you. It's a very interesting talk. Thank you. What chilies do you recommend for the shata? That's from Allison. Allison would like to know, what chilies would you use?
I would just say jalapenos, but also you can spike them with a little bit of serrano chilies, because jalapenos are not spicy enough. So I would do a ratio of 80% jalapeno and 20% serrano.
That was a very specific answer, Allison. So I hope you're happy with that.
Never heard such a specific answer. I thought he was going to say green or red.
No, I planned for it already, because I realized that when you say just get any mild chili, there are so many varieties, and in the UK we kind of very dully, we don't have so many varieties as in the US, so you just have to be quite precise about it.
In the UK, the ones we're buying, they're literally just called sort of not too mild, not too hot. They're sort of generic chilies, but I appreciate that's not a useful answer in the States.
Yeah.
But, be warned the addiction if you haven't yet started on the shatta journey.
Tara, there are many stories in here, and we haven't touched on a bunch of them. We haven't gone in depth on the refugee camp or the olives and the olive tree and its defender, and find them on Facebook and all the goodness out there. I have to imagine that there's stories that didn't even make it into the book. Will they live somewhere else in the future?
They're going to live in the massive Netflix series that we're going to make about Palestine. I mean,
You're
who
in the
knows?
right company.
Who knows? I mean, yeah, we did have stories, and it was heartbreaking at the end because we had all the beautiful photography from Jenny Zarins, we had all the incredible recipes, we had all the stories, and we had the publisher saying, "Dudes, like you can't go up any more extent. You've already pushed it and pushed it." And it's a real heartbreaking process of kind of killing your darlings at the end, and everyone kind of wanting everything. So yeah, there were stories, and who knows if there's any magazine editors out there looking for good stories on profiles in Palestinians, let us know.
Yeah.
And you know, and also we haven't even touched on all the stories, obviously, in Palestine. There are just so many more stories to be told. And
Well, I remember years ago, I had the great honor of hosting the Palestinian filmmaker Hani Abu Assad, who had made a film called Paradise Now, the only film to be recognized by the Academy Awards as being Palestinian, and it deserved it, certainly. But he was asked by somebody if he felt bad that he didn't cover all the Palestinian stories, and said, my role as an artist is only to tell the one story that I'm telling right now. So you just, I presume, treat the Palestine the same way, that you tell the stories that you can right now, and there's time to tell other stories in the future. And I'm praying that you will, because it's fantastic. I was wondering if each of you might share like one personal memory from this process that's not in the book that will stay with you from here on out. Start with you, Tara.
right, goodness me. I mean, what to say? I don't know. I mean, maybe just thinking about, so talking about the theatre of putting a book together. Like when you shoot a cookbook, it's sort of 14 days in Camden Town in the UK, and it's just complete kind of mayhem theatre with just sort of food in, food out, rushing downstairs, all the weather, with our great friend Jenny, who was doing the photography, and that whole experience was just kind of a whirlwind that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And also meeting Sami's family when I was a complete outsider, and just sort of literally observing the scene because I was not speaking Arabic. And you know, we've talked a lot about Sami's family, but I'm not sure. And I kept thinking, you know, it's like all families on Christmas Day, when, you know, everything that can be said and should be said, but actually no one says it. Everyone just starts teasing each other and kind of ribbing each other for getting fat or getting divorced or whatever anyone's done. And just that sheer privilege of just me, this girl who didn't even know what preserved lemons were 20 years ago, just sitting in this living room and sort of bearing witness to this scene was amazing.
The Irish would never tease one another.
They just drink.
And Sami, do you have a memory?
I remember the first time when me and Tara went to Palestine, and we met with Vivian, and she was supposed to be, well, she was our fixer, and somehow we decided the first morning we arrived there, that we're gonna meet behind the checkpoint, and she, the last minute, decided that she's gonna take a car. And we didn't decide which side of the checkpoint we came. So we were on the other side. As a Palestinian from Bethlehem, it took her like a couple of hours to get to us, and she was fuming. And I just kind of, both of us went like, ah, and Tara is just standing there like, what's going on here?
These guys had never ever met before. None of us had met before, and we were going to be together for 2 weeks. And the first thing that happened was this massive showdown. And I was like, what's happening? This is meant to be the beginning of a beautiful journey, and we're all just screaming at each other. But then we all had this massive hug, and then off we went. It was just brilliant. It was like just getting everything out, and then Ayala, let's go.
Well, I'm glad that worked out.
And to do, you know, it's kind of sometimes they can be really loud, and something is bothering you. You don't just keep it. You just kind of take it out and then done with it. And everything was perfect after that.
So if you take away nothing else from today, people vent regularly, and you'll be fine. My other takeaway was don't use Waze in Palestine. That's not a way to get around. right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I actually learned a ton from the book. I'm so grateful to both of you for sharing it. People know it, should have it. If they haven't ordered it, they can order many, many copies online. You can get this copy. You can get, where's the UK copy?
No, sorry, I'm being rubbish. I've got my American, I haven't got my UK one.
Oh, Laura has a UK
one.
copy. Okay, there we go. So everybody should have one. I think everybody should have two, frankly. I think everybody should buy two because you got to spread the love. I really did find a tremendous book. Thank you so much. I love the stories. I love that sense of place. I love the sense of home that you brought to the pages, Sami and Tara. Really fantastic work. Thank you so much. And I'm sure, Laura, you have something to say, but I just want to express my gratitude for being here at night, zooming in. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Tara and Sami and Warren. Thank you everyone for watching today. You'll have access to watch this for the next 30 days, and then we will push it out sort of more broadly so more people can watch it. So thank you everyone for joining us, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, and please come to Seattle when we can travel again, okay?
Of course.
If you don't follow Tara on Instagram, go look at the picture she put up today of her trip to Seattle 15 years ago.
Oh, my hair. I thought I could blame coronavirus for my hair, but it always looked ridiculous.
And Sami and Tara, please say hello to the cult leader for me.
Yes, please do. Please do. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.